forensic investigation will assist in determining how the police officers died. A handbag containing items such as driver's license and ID documents and a car server's handbook were retrieved in the vehicle. Masemola says the probe is expected to shed light on what really happened.
We have got no rules to stick to whatever charge when you investigate. Forensics, they're going to go through the car, look thoroughly on the car, and the fact that I'm saying it looks like it capsized first. Remember, I'm not an expert, it's what I'm seeing. But they will be able to determine, because they are engineers, they are qualified people, they will thoroughly investigate the car. They'll be able to tell us exactly what happened to the car.
Lastly, all crew and passengers on board an aid flotilla for Gaza that was hit by drones in international waters of Malta overnight have been confirmed safe. The Maltese government said in a statement the vessel had 12 crew members on board and 4 civilian passengers. No casualties were reported. It added that a tug arrived on scene and began firefighting operations. An armed force of Malta patrol vessel was also dispatched to provide further assistance. The ship remains outside territorial waters and is being monitored by the competent authorities. For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And in your sports news, a half century from Anneke Dirksen enabled South Africa to reach 235 for 9 in a tri-series match against the host side Sri Lanka in Colombo earlier this morning, while Manchester United boss Ruben Amorim says the 3-0 win at Athletic Bilbao in the Europa League semi-final first leg last night is the best result. I have details of these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Africa Update with Lulu Kabu, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
Well, thank you to Onele Nzinzi and Msibudi Makura. Join us in conversation on our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook at Channel Africa, you can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763 as 406-9126 #Africa Updates, and let us know which country you're in. And if you have any stories that you'd like us to highlight, you can send us an email at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call on +27 714 4459.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802. Africa Update with Lulu Kabu on Channel Africa.
Now, according to a Reuters news report, Donald Trump's senior Africa advisor, Masad Bolo, says the United States of America is pushing the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda to sign a peace accord at the White House in about 2 months. Now, this will be accompanied by bilateral mineral deals that would bring billions of dollars of Western investment to the region. Rwanda and Congo are expected to submit separate drafts of a peace agreement. Now, to talk to us more on this, we are joined on the line by Hubert Kabasu Babu Katulondi, a Congolese freethinker, writer and columnist, to talk to us about these developments. Now, Hubert, good afternoon and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Thank you very much and warmest greetings to your listeners.
Now, are you able to explain the current dynamics between Rwanda and the DRC and why the United States is so involved in pushing for this peace accord and a minerals agreement?
Well, the U.S., as you know, it not only it has not begun just with President Trump. It began with President Bush, who was pushing the geostrategic plan of trying to mitigate the sort of predominance of China over Congolese strategic minerals. However, currently the Trump administration is pushing that, trying to accelerate that. Unfortunately, the sort of strategic minerals that the Americans are looking for are predominantly in the eastern region of the Congo, where the M23 has conquered several major cities. You're talking about the wolframite, from which they extract tungsten. It's used in super alloys for to manufacture, for military applications. You have pyrochlore, you have gold, of course, and you have coltan. So the largest deposits of these minerals are where the war is taking place. And so the Americans want to get the Congolese and the Rwandan government to sort of have an agreement so that they can end the war and allow the Americans to invest in those mining deposits.
Now, what role do minerals play in the ongoing tensions between these two countries? We've seen and heard the president of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, saying that he is not involved in this crisis that's in the eastern DRC. And now, with the U.S. basically stating to both presidents that this now needs to happen to bring peace to the region more especially, and for economic development of business to start taking place. Does this not, highlight the involvement or the alleged involvement of Rwanda's Paul Kagame?
Yes, Rwanda was involved, but we need to emphasize the fact that I'm a former bank manager or regional bank manager of, then it was, there was the bank. I worked in Bukavu, in the city of Bukavu. So we dealt with minerals there, coffee, cocoa, etc., etc. But the region had already some regional structures like CPGL, etc. And those countries there were already cooperating. That's number one. But number two, remember, Rwanda built 2 gold refineries. Uganda also built, 2 gold refineries, focusing or getting the supplies from Congolese channels. But when Mr. Tshisekedi came in power, Mr. Tshisekedi also signed a deal. He signed a deal whereby Congolese gold was going to be, where Congolese were going to supply Rwandan refineries with gold. That's number one. But also the deal expanded to other minerals, coltan, wolframite, and in fact, Mr. Tshisekedi, the agreement with Rwanda then was also to give Rwanda a possibility to invest in the state-owned company called Sakima of the Greater Kivu region. Somehow that agreement didn't work. That agreement collapsed. And then war started again with M23. And then Mr. Tshisekedi sold the very same deposits to Dubai. There's a company called Primera Metals, dealing with coltan and wolframite, and then a second company called Primera Gold, sending They even built a refinery in Kivu. So the minerals are bond of contentions. The Americans want to have access to these minerals. Americans working with the Arab of Qatar and United Arab Emirates. The Americans are working together. The Americans want to have access to these minerals. But M23 is controlling the area. So the deal is to pressurize the Rwandan government so that they can also put pressure on M23 to stop the war, to make the area accessible. However, there's an exception. Currently, at the area called Walikale, there's Alpha Mine, which is a company registered in Johannesburg Stock Exchange, and even South Africa's IDC has got a stake in that company that is mining tin, and that area at Walikale has got one of the largest deposits of tin in the world. So Americans want to bring some private military companies to sort of bring security there. The focus being, or the strategic objective being, to make the area, the entire Kivu region, accessible, peaceful, accessible for American investment, and as they say, development in the area. But is that possible? That's a major question, because currently You have Alpha Min, I've alluded to Alpha Min, but you have Anglo Gold Ashanti further north, and you have other companies like American Canadian companies working in the area.
Now, how does the involvement of the U.S. in this peace process affect the relationships of both countries with other regional players like Uganda, Kenya, and Angola? And also now the relations with all the countries that were there, that are still there, including South Africa in terms of, their defense forces to sort of bring peace to the region. Does it not take away the talk or what Africans like to say in terms of African leaders like to say, let Africans solve their own problems?
Oh, the last segment of your question is so pertinent, so salient, because here, this debacle of the soldiers, the troops of SAMIR in the DRC, those troops are the contingent of SADC actually is withdrawing via Rwanda and Tanzania. This debacle, this fiasco, really speaks to how regional leaders and Africans in general have given up. They have not shown ingenuity and robust leadership in getting the Congolese and the Rwandans, particularly the Congolese, to sort out the political crisis, the internal political crisis, which is the fundamental cause of the entire destabilization of the region. Yet, when there was a much more complex war, which was portrayed as being the African World War involving 9 countries, President Mbeki single-handedly solved the problem at Sun City, with President of Botswana, Masire. They solved the problem. They didn't have to go to the Americans or to the Arabs. Now you have 2 African countries. The processes of Africa have collapsed, have been derailed. Luanda process, Nairobi process have collapsed. There was even a point where there was a joint meeting of EAC and SADC in Dar es Salaam. All the resolutions there collapsed. All of a sudden, everybody was surprised. Even President Lorenzo of Angola was surprised to see Mr. Tshisekedi and Mr. Kagame sitting there with the one of the Arab leaders in Doha to solve the problem. So the Americans and the Arabs have taken over where Africans were supposed to bring up an African solution. It's a shame. It's a disgrace.
Where does this take, the African Union, the United Nations, and also what will happen with regards to the DRC? And yes, they say there will be development, economic development. That's what they're chasing, and peace and stability in that particular region of the country. But it takes away, will it not take away from the Congolese citizens? Because they're the ones who are suffering in the eastern parts of the country, which it also impacts the rest of the country and businesses that are already based there.
I think this declaration of principles, although it says that it links or brings added value to the process that began already and speaks about development, I think it's a very simplistic way of understanding the causes and even the magnitude of the degradation of the situation in the Congo. You cannot bring development simply by saying Rwanda should stop supporting M23. You must address the core problems. One of the problems there is the authoritarian, predatory drift of the regime in Kinshasa, which has caused the degradation of the state in terms of the institutions, in terms of the army, particularly the army. The Congolese army has been emasculated. To bring development there, you can't just rely on private militaries to come in there and impose peace. You have to build on the existing security apparatus. Yet we have the army that has collapsed. It's using genocidal forces, using mercenaries, even using traditional tribal militias who rely on witchcraft, to to be protected against bullets and so on and so forth, who don't have the basic understanding of the function and mission of an army. You have the police that is collapsed. You have the administration that is collapsed. So even if you bring in mercenaries, you say you're going to bring investors. How are investors going to conduct productive, sustainable, durable economic operations pertaining to these mines if the state itself has collapsed? So, and also they have a regime that is accused by the M23 and many opposition leaders, including former President Kabila, and we hear now that Mr. Tshisekedi is trying to remove his parliamentary immunity to get him arrested. So how are you going to have sustainable, economically rational operations if the state has collapsed and there is political chaos? So from my perspective as a political scientist, I think the approach by the Americans is very simplistic.
We could go on and on. There's a lot to unpack here because that issue of the former president, Joseph Kabila, the fact that he is being accused of war crimes. It's something that we need to unpack at a later time. We have run out of time. And thank you so much, Hubert, for joining us on Africa Update.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
And that is Hubert Kabasu Babu Katulondi, a Congolese freethinker, writer and columnist joining us on the line.
We are on Open Views Audio Bouquet. Channel 628. The Morning Switch Weekend. With the Shy Guy.
Just the other day, I went to pick up my daughter from school. And as per usual, her friends don't usually come to my car just to say hellos and goodbyes. So this particular day, they made this comment about my jacket. Saying that it's giving baddie vibes.
You say my jacket is giving what?
It's giving
baddie vibes. It got me thinking, where did the baddies come from? Because nothing is new under the sun, as it is said. I was like, oh yes, remember the Kenyan parliamentarian? Her name is Millie Odhiambo.
When you are urging me to be a good example to the girls, the younger ones who are doing their first term, Mr. Speaker, if they are good girls, they'll never get corner office. Be as bad as Millie Odhiambo, you will be the mother of this house. So do not be cheated like the African culture, where you are told have decorum, be nice. I'm telling you, you will go nowhere. Be a bad guy.
And I thought to myself, that is the original baddie.
Saturday and Sunday mornings belong to the Morning Switch. 3 to 6 a.m. Central African Time. Africa Update with Lulu Kabu. 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
It is 21 after 12 Central African Time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Now, authorities in the Democratic Republic of Congo have launched a bid to strip former President Joseph Kabila of his immunity so he can face trial on charges of supporting the M23 insurgency in the country's east. Kabila led the DRC for 18 years after succeeding his father, Laurent, who was shot dead in 2001. After stepping down, he was given the title of Senator for Life, which gives him legal immunity. Now, in order to pursue a legal case against Kabila, a DRC's military prosecutor has asked the Senate to overturn his lifelong immunity. Channel Africa's Rise and Shine anchor, Asanda Beda, earlier spoke to Dr. Charles Newkonge, an Africa peace and conflict analyst.
He gets shielded from immunity from prosecution, and he continues to enjoy his benefits as a former president. So the stripping of these immunities actually open him up for prosecution and for some of his actions as president to be put to question.
What are the possibilities that this lifelong immunity can now be revoked, and what processes would be involved?
The processes of revoking the immunities have to go through the parliament, and I see that going through in part because the political will at the moment seems to be tilting towards that direction.
How much power does his opponents have then in making this a reality? Would it not require a new law to be signed in order to hold?
That new law would have to be promulgated by the parliament, or would have to be discussed in parliament and signed into law by the president. That's why I'm saying the political will at the moment seems to be heading towards that direction, in part because Kabila has actually frowned, and publicly so, at how the current political administration is prosecuting the war against M23. To the extent that he has been very vocal against the administration, it is perceived that Kabila is supporting M23, which is actually a historical mistake, given that those who are doing the analysis now don't realize that M23 was as much a headache for Kabila as it is for Tshisekedi.
Reasons given for the call to revoke this immunity are that authorities have gathered clear evidence that implicates Kabila in war crimes, in crimes against humanity, and a massacre of civilians. Do we know if this evidence comes as part of his successor, President Felix Tshisekedi's 2024 accusations that Kabila was supporting the M23 rebels, or are they from fresh accusations and leads?
To the extent that we have not seen the evidence in question, I think we shouldn't comment on that.
Kabila did deny the accusations, though, leveled against him, and returned to the DRC last month to help with peace efforts and in rebuilding the DRC. What do you make of the timing of this move by him?
The timing is opportune, particularly because Tshisekedi is running out of time in his second mandate. So somewhere, somehow, Tshisekedi has to frame a new political action or a new political set of things which he has to do. So Kabila himself, also wanting to position himself as part of those who can actually stabilize the DRC, is perhaps positioning himself, otherwise a successor, who can actually take over from Tshisekedi and turn the page from what Kabila has considered a mistake in leadership or mispriorities, which have actually not assessed the troubles of the Congo properly.
So is President Felix Tshisekedi also trying in a way to shield himself from having a reputation that's in tatters? Should Kabila actually get involved in peace efforts and succeed?
President Tshisekedi.
That was Channel Africa's Rise and Shine anchor Asanda Beda speaking to Dr. Charles Newkonge, an Africa peace and conflict analyst. It is 26 after 12 Central African Time.
Africa Update with Lulu Kabu on Channel Africa.
The South African National Defence Force says it has started a phased withdrawal of its troops from the Democratic Republic of Congo, fulfilling a Southern African Development Community directive that was issued earlier in the year. The troops from South Africa and Tanzania were deployed in the year 2023 as part of the SADC mission in the DRC. SADC decided to end its deployment after 17 soldiers perished in the conflict. And now to talk to us about the logistics and safety of the soldiers as they make their way home, we are joined by the SANDF spokesperson, Admiral Prince Shabalala. Admiral, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon, Lulu, and the viewers of Africa Channel.
Now, how many of the South African soldiers are coming back in this first phase?
There will be a couple of 100. I cannot speak on the numbers due to our security policy, but it's suffice to say that the advanced team is coming back home. There will be a couple of over 1,000 soldiers that in total will be coming back home.
And what is the initial mission of the South African troops in the DRC? We've seen reports, we've seen the updates, and have the goals of the mission been achieved so far?
Look, Lulu, our mission was to support the MONUSCO United Nations Security Resolution that call for peace efforts enforcement in support of MONUSCO, which is a United Nations force. So based on the situations that emanated, we obviously could not succeed in achieving our objective, but nevertheless that the SANDF as a troop contributing country really protected the civilians when Goma was overwhelmed with rebels, and we managed to protect many civilian lives and infrastructure. And it's a job that we are very proud of. And if we are asked again as SNDF, we shall heed the call. But obviously, the mission has been terminated, and the head of state made that resolution through the SADC summit, and they voted to terminate the mission.
Now, what measures are in place to ensure that this withdrawal process is smooth and does not leave gaps in the peacekeeping efforts in the DRC? And just go into the process in terms of traveling and being supported by the Rwandan Defense Force to get through to Tanzania. Why that process as well?
Look, when you are withdrawing troops, there are certain measures that must be in place. One of them is our protection of our equipment and our assets. And we obviously have to engage with the parties that are fighting to give us a safe passage during our return. And all the parties that have come on board, and thanks to our Chief of Defenses of both the regions of SADC as well as East African Community, who then said there should be a safe passage for the SAMI DRC forces to bring back their troop as well as their equipment. So far, things are going very well according to the plan. And our equipment, which is the first phase, have managed to cross, not all of them, but it's still an early stage, it's still in process. Some have already crossed Tanzania, and they are now en route to one of our strategic places where they are going to be flown back to South Africa. So the next convoys are going to be coming in those waves, and then the personnel as well will come in waves. And so both equipment will come in a staggered manner and in a very orderly fashion. And we hope by end of the next month, this whole movement will be concluded.
Right. Admiral, thank you for your time on Africa Update. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
As Admiral Prince Shabalala, the SANDF spokesperson, joining us on the line. It is 12:31 and our news headlines up next with Onel Nsinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. Today marks the deadline for Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo to present a draft peace deal as agreed in a U.S. brokered deal last week. The two countries' foreign ministers met in Washington with the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. The South African National Defence Force says it is implementing precautionary measures to ensure the safety of its personnel and equipment during the phased withdrawal of its troops from the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The withdrawal began on Tuesday following the directive from the SADC Head of State Summit in March. And the Red Cross says humanitarian work in Gaza is on the verge of total collapse. This is 2 months after Israel imposed a blockade on aid supplies entering the territory. Channel Africa News, I'm Onel Nsinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Onel. Say good afternoon to Msibudi Makura with our sports update.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. A very good afternoon from the sports desk. We'll start with cricket news. So an excellent maiden half century from Henry Dirksen enabled South Africa to reach 235 for 9 in their tri-series match against the host side Sri Lanka in Colombo earlier on today. South Africa put into bat first, had a poor start, losing both their openers in the first power play. Following her recent century against India, Tamsin Brits was bowled out by left-arm spinner Sugandika Kumar's arm ball for 14 runs, and Nora Wolford was cancelled out by a brilliant leg cutter from Sri Lanka's only pace bowler, Maliki Madari. Now, the key partnership then began with South Africa struggling on 120 runs for 5 in the 29th over of the game. Chloe Tryon, as well as Dirksen, who impressed with a brisk 30 in 20 balls against India, both played with a pleasing freedom as they added 62 at the run ball for the 6th wicket, taking South Africa to 182 in the 40th over before Tryon was magnificently caught on a long on boundary by Nila Kashika Silva. So the South Africans reaching 50 overs and they got to 239 for 9, and now Sri Lanka needing about 78 runs from 98 balls to win this match against South Africa. Currently the run rate is at 4 runs per over, and the required run rate is 4 runs per over for Sri Lanka, so they're within the target of winning this match against South Africa. On to this now. Nigeria's national under-20 side, the Flying Eagles, kicked off their campaign at the 2025 Under-20 Africa Cup of Nations tournament with a 1-0 victory over Tunisia. Awul Ibrahim scored the match-winning goal in the 38th minute, capping off a dominant first-half performance by the 7-time African champions. The win gives Nigeria a strong start in Group B and continues their impressive record against Tunisia at the under-20 level, this being their 4th victory in 6 meetings since 1981. The Flying Eagles now will shift their focus to the highly anticipated clash against Morocco, the Lions Cubs, on Sunday evening at the same venue. Our Nigerian-based correspondent Tony Ubani found this report.
The Flying Eagles played with confidence against the aggressive non-Africans, and Ibrahim's goal was well-deserved after Nigeria dominated in the first period. The 7-time champions thought they had secured a penalty kick in the 72nd minute to increase their lead after Mendo's Richardson was shoved to the floor, but the video assistant referee ruled otherwise. Goalkeeper Ifeanyi Hakot came up with a big save 3 minutes to the end, denying Tunisia forward Benale from close range, and the game ended with the Nigerians on the high and looking forward to their clash with Morocco's Lion Cubs at the same venue on Sunday evening.
Now, former Nigeria's national football team, the Super Eagles' first-choice goalkeeper, as well as ex-trainer Alu Agu, has added his voice to the debate over the lack of contracts affecting Nigerian coaches in the country's national teams, and also declared this a bad trend that must stop. Now, the issue of indigenous coaches not being issued with proper contracts when they take up the national team appointments handed by the Nigerian Football Federation surfaced with the death of Eagles' former captain, as well as the head coach Christian Chukwu, who was reportedly being owed heavily up until the time of his death. Agu says coaches must demand a written contract or appointment letter before they take on the job as a coach.
It's a normal thing to do all over the whole world, and that is the way it is. When you come into a job or an appointment, there must be a letter or a letter of appointment or a contract, and that has to be read and understood before you get started with the job. So I think that is the normal thing to do. So it is not a new thing at all. That is the way it should be, and that is the way it's supposed to be.
Further field now, Ruben Amorim warned these Manchester United players that they have not yet booked their place in the Europa League final, despite a dominant 3-0 win over Athletic Club in the semi-final first leg on Thursday night. So United are on the brink of setting up a European final against Premier League rivals Tottenham Hotspur following the 3-1 win over Bodo Glimt in the other semi-final first leg, thanks to 3 goals in 15 minutes at the end of the first half at San Mamés. Now, Amorim has admitted that United have an advantage when they host Athletic Club at Old Trafford next week, Thursday, the 8th of May, as they continue to hunt to qualify for the Champions League as of next season. And finally, the South African men's sevens rugby team, the Blitzboks, are looking to salvage a relatively disappointing season by winning the World Championship in Los Angeles this weekend. The 2025 international season ends with the championship, where the top 8 teams in the completed World Series will fight it out with the winner-takes-all tournament. Now, the Blitzboks finished 4th in the season series of 6 tournaments. The highlight, of course, was winning the Cape Town event. But in the other events, the team failed to reach the high standards their fans have become rather accustomed to. Now, Ronald Brown, who is also back from injury, says although the Los Angeles tournament is quite different from the other tournaments this season, the team will show the same respect.
Yeah, for sure. We do it. We definitely do it as another serious tournament. We're familiar with the conditions in LA. It's similar to back in South Africa, and we do treat it like a serious another game, and not a once-off, because we do feel a little bit pressure when we speak about the word once-off. So we definitely treat it as another series, and hopefully, like I said, we can be successful.
That's a wrap from the sports desk at the SAWA. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole? Well, in that case, let Channel Africa make this a possibility. Channel Africa is willing to advertise your business for as little as 30,000 rands or $1,719.18. To get access to these great rates, send all requests to mokoenata@SABC. That's MOKOENATA@SABC. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Africa Update on Channel Africa.
Thank you, Msibudi, for that update. It is 12:40 Central African time, and our business news up next with Buntle Headbush.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
A gauge of South African manufacturing sentiment has dropped sharply in April, with survey respondents citing uncertainty linked to global trade tensions and local politics. The seasonally adjusted Purchasing Managers Index, sponsored by South African bank Absa, declined to 44.7 points in April from 48.7 in March. This was the sixth straight month that the headline PMI has been below 50, reflecting a contraction in activity. Economists say U.S. President Trump's tariffs and months of wrangling over South Africa's budget have culminated in many businesses being left in a state of paralysis. Other local factors dampening the mood included excessive rains and the return of scheduled power cuts. The Economic Freedom Fighters political party in South Africa says it does not expect any meaningful change to come from the national budget speech that will be delivered later this month. This comes after the proposed budget was rejected last month, mainly because of a proposed value-added tax increase. Following an outcry by some opposition parties, Minister of Finance Enoch Godongwana reversed the proposed VAT increase last week. The EFF leader, Julius Malema, addressed a Workers' Day rally held in Rustenburg in the Northwest Province and said unemployment needs to be addressed as a priority.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Africa Update with Lulu Kabu, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
It is 12:42 Central African Time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Thank you to Buntle Headbush with our business news. Join us in conversation on our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook at Channel Africa. You can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763 at 406-9126. Hashtag Africa Update, and let us know which country you're in. And if you have any stories that you'd like us to highlight or to focus on, send us an email. It is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or give us a call on +2711 714 4459.
Tune in and turn up the volume. This is Channel Africa. Africa Update with Lulu Kabu on Channel Africa.
In the last week alone, the confirmed number of civilians killed in North Darfur in Sudan was at least 542. This is according to UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric, who was briefing reporters on Thursday on the situation in Sudan. Dujarric said the UN Human Rights Office is particularly concerned about reports of extrajudicial killings in Khartoum state.
Turning to another horrendous humanitarian situation that is Sudan, we continue to get very disturbing reports out of that country, and it's mainly in North Darfur State. Our humanitarian colleagues tell us that in the last week alone, the confirmed number of civilians killed in North Darfur was at least 542. The actual death toll is, of course, likely to be much higher. Our colleagues warn. Reports of extrajudicial executions in Khartoum state are also extremely disturbing. Our human rights chief, Volker Turk, said he had personally alerted both leaders of the Rapid Support Forces and the Sudanese armed forces of the catastrophic human rights consequences of this war. You will have seen a statement he issued this morning in which he said it is well past the time for the conflict to stop. On the continued efforts of the Secretary General's personal envoy, Ramtane Lamamra, I can tell you that this week he was in Cairo, where he discussed with officials there, including the Egyptian foreign minister, the recent developments in Sudan and the ongoing efforts to stop the war. They shared the views that an inclusive Sudanese-led political path is needed to restore peace in the country, preserving the unity of Sudan, its sovereignty, and its territorial integrity. Separately, he exchanged views with Ahmed Abul Gheit, the Secretary General of the League of Arab States, on coordinating efforts between the UN, the Arab League, and concerned multilateral organizations to advance peace endeavors in Sudan. Earlier this week, Mr. Lamamra was in Port Sudan and at Addis Ababa, where he continued his engagements with various stakeholders.
That was UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric briefing reporters about the situation in Sudan. It is 12:45 Central African Time.
Africa Update with Lulu Kabu on Channel Africa.
Kenya's National Police Service says preliminary investigations indicate that the fatal shooting of Kasipul Member of Parliament Charles Ongondo Were was a planned and well-executed attack. A statement from the Office of the Inspector General of Police on Thursday said the shooting, which occurred at the City Mortuary roundabout on Wednesday night, was premeditated. However, no arrests have been made so far. The MP's killing has reignited debate in his restive constituency, where he was both feared and followed. And for more on this, Edward Wanyonyi joins us on the line. Edward, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here.
All right, Edward. Now, just the fact that the police are coming out and saying that this was premeditated, how have the Kenyans, including politicians and ordinary citizens, responded to or reacted to Were's killing? And the fact that the statement already issued so far is that it was premeditated. Why do they think it was premeditated?
They conclude, rightfully so, it was premeditated because we don't have the level of execution and capability just within civilian side for people to settle scores at that level. This was a busy roundabout. Within that roundabout, there is a university on the one side of the roundabout. There's a national hospital, Kenyatta National Hospital, on the other side. A few minutes away, you have the Defense Memorial Hospital, and at the same time, you have a main artery coming from town. So it is a place which has a lot of stakes in terms of if you're looking at protection, and yet the MP was executed at that site. So it requires for you to have proper planning, proper mapping, to know how to be able to shoot and even not endanger other civilians or citizens who are around that space, not to endanger other motorists. That's why I agree that the the motive and the planning was well planned in advance, and the choice of the weapon and the getaway motor vehicle, which was basically a motorcycle, is actually showing there was a high level of planning and operational details went into place.
Now, what is the motive? Because where he came from, as just reading verbatim, is he was feared, he was loved and followed, but also there was a lot of fear. So, and there have been allegations against him. There were issues of allegations of violence and so on. So, what is the motive?
We cannot tell right now because the nature of a lot of our politicians, especially within very highly competitive political zones, is that they tend to employ certain militia to support or suppress violence against their competitors. And normally what happens is that this militia, if they're not well managed or, well taken care of, they tend to have a lot of, revenge attacks. Sometimes you might find that also within the space of, political violence, there are people who might actually seek some level of revenge. So at the moment, you may never know to what extent there will be a clear motive, but you can actually see that they didn't come and take anything. They didn't kill the other occupants in the vehicle, his close protection officer, the driver. They were not harmed. They just came for him alone. And so that means there was something either personal that was actually attributed to him, which ideally we see that there are clips which are resurfacing whereby he had like some level of premonition because he kept on talking about the fact that if he dies, he should be given the same level of honor that the former a bodyguard of presidential candidate or former Prime Minister Raila Odinga was given. So I think there was a level of him also understanding that his life was in danger and that, something like this could possibly happen.
And also, he did speak about it at a funeral. But he, at that funeral, he said that he believes that there are some politicians who are gunning out for him, who want him dead. So, with that in mind, were there no investigations or further investigations done by the police or security forces with the statements that he made?
We cannot tell whether he actually reported the same to a police station to determine whether there was any kind of investigation. But also we know that there are quite a number of investigations that people had claimed to have lodged against him, and yet the police were dragging their foot not to respond in time as expected. And so it is still going to be very, very fluid in the sense of whether there will be a case that will be followed up and a statement issued or any arrest to be made. But at the moment, it becomes a case whereby within the people he had apparently faulted based on his type of politics, they feel like justice has been served. But of course, the other people feel that this is a big affront. But we have to realize that this is not the first time a Kenyan MP has been taken out or, assassinated or taken out in this manner. Because in 2015, there was also a major shooting of an MP within CBD, within town. And that was actually, indicated to be traced to be issues to do with, land issues or conflicts that the MP was involved. So it is not a strange, but also at the same time, we're saying for now, within this 12th parliament, this is the first kind of killing.
Now, earlier this year, locals demanded for his arrest following violent incidents that left several youth injured and in some cases dead, with one incident involving a rival aspirant vehicle being smashed during a funeral that he attended. Just tell us more about this and why there was no follow-up from the police.
I think we need to look at that incident not in isolation, but that the reality has become a lot of our funerals have become very much politicized and actually grounds for a lot of political rivalry. And so this particular incident just happened that his militia or his people who are his crew, which tend to be violent, it has been said that over time went overboard. And so I think within the community, there was a lot of issues to do with wherever he moves, there's a perception that he actually was not able to rein on this group of violent supporters that were around him. And so that incident was just the first one, but there have been other incidents that have been coming out. Challenge is that we cannot verify whether those incidences are they were recorded in a police station for follow-up, or actually there was a lot of fear and suppression. So then because of his death, now these incidences are coming out. But the nature of politicization of funerals, violence of funerals has been there for a while, and especially within places whereby there is a lot of political contestation.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Edward. We'll leave it there for today.
Thank you. Welcome.
That's Edward Wanyonyi, a Kenyan journalist, joining us on the line. It is 12:53 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa.
Africa Update with Lulu Kabu on Channel Africa.
Fires that have ravaged large parts of central Israel since Wednesday have largely been extinguished following a 30-hour battle as aid arrived from Europe. Now, this is according to the country's Fire and Rescue Authority. About 5,000 acres, including 3,000 acres of forest, have been scorched since the blaze started in the hills outside the city on Wednesday. Tutongobeni has more.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared the situation a national emergency, pleading for international aid. Firefighter planes from Greece, Cyprus, Croatia, and Italy were sent to tackle the blaze, with reports saying that Ukraine, Spain, France, and some other nations were also committed to sending aid. The cause of the fires remained unclear, although Netanyahu said that 18 people had been arrested on suspicion of igniting the fires. At least a dozen people have been hospitalized and 10 have been treated in the field by medical professionals. Authorities said hot and dry conditions with strong winds made controlling the fires more challenging, and a senior official warned they could flare up again. The fires led to the cancellation of most official events celebrating Israel's Independence Day on Thursday, and there was a nationwide ban on lighting fires for barbecues, a traditional part of the day. A major highway linking Jerusalem and Tel Aviv has now reopened.
That report by Tutongobeni.
Africa Update on Channel Africa.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa is in the process of establishing a judicial commission of inquiry to establish whether attempts were made to prevent the investigation or prosecution of apartheid-era crimes referred by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission to the National Prosecuting Authority. Allegations of improper influence in delaying or hindering the investigation and prosecution of apartheid-era crimes have persisted from previous administrations. This is the outcome of settlement discussions in a court application brought by families of victims of apartheid-era crimes. And Asanda Beda spoke to Advocate Dumisa Ntsebeza, SC, a South African lawyer, human rights activist, and former commissioner of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
There's a whole list of cases, but then it's not even from the outcome of the TRC Commission in 1998. You will know that the mandate period of the TRC was up to 1998. And obviously, it turned out that there was a lot of work that needed to be done. And the mandate period, which was only 2 years, was hardly enough to cover all the cases. And you will remember that the TRC was supposed to investigate gross violations of human rights, and it also had an amnesty committee that determined whether people were qualifying for amnesty if they meet certain requirements. Now, when in 1998 it became clear that, the commission had to close because that was what was in the legislation, but there were still outstanding cases which had not been dealt with. Then it was given a further extension of life, except that it was only, I think, one member of the commission who was going to continue to deal with amnesty applications. That is why the matter had to, the commission's life had to be extended to incorporate provision for amnesty applications. It is out of those amnesty applications at the end of 2003 that it was then that committee, the amnesty committee, indicated in its report that there were about 300 cases which were calling for either further investigation or prosecution.
That's a human rights activist and a former commissioner of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission and a South African lawyer. That's Advocate Dumisa Nzabeza, SC, speaking to my colleague Asanda Beda. Well, we say good afternoon to the Upside team and find out what's coming up today on this Friday. Hello, Namvumi.
Happy Friday, Lulu.
Happy Friday.
It's music Fridays. You know how we do on a Friday. We're going to be speaking to Gemma Fassi. She is now out with a new single. And I really just want to find out. I think the question everybody wants to find out is if she's related to Brenda Fassie.
That's the first thing that I wanted to ask when you finished.
Everyone asks this question.
Okay,
I don't think it's been answered. I don't think it's been answered. And I think that's part of the allure that she is using to captivate the market. We're going to get a mix from K-Mat and then speak to Umgomezulu. Umgomezulu. Yes. He's a musician as well. So it's really just going to be good music to usher you into the weekend.
Oh, that's the Upside coming up at the top of the hour with Nompumelelo Ngubeni and Teboho Lekuleni. For myself, Lulu Gabu and the Africa Update team, it's been a great week. Let's do this again on Monday. Keep safe and continue with us on our socials. Bye-bye.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And with your latest news this hour, today marks the deadline for Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo to present a draft peace deal as agreed in a U.S. brokered deal last week. The two countries' foreign ministers met in Washington with the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Hundreds of thousands of civilians have been displaced in recent months as Rwandan-backed M23 rebels have seized swathes of mineral-rich territory in eastern DR Congo. After losing territory, the government in Kinshasa turned to the U.S. for help in exchange for access to their minerals. The South African National Defence Force says it is implementing precautionary measures to ensure the safety of its personnel and equipment during the phased withdrawal of its troops from the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The withdrawal, which began on Tuesday, follows a directive from the SADC heads of state summit in March that approved troops leaving via Rwanda and Tanzania. The SANDF spokesperson Prince Shabalala says the only troops remaining in the DRC will be those serving under the United Nations Organization Stabilizing Mission in the DRC.
The military, we don't let our guards down. We always organize ourselves to make sure that we are safe as we engage or travel on these routes. And we are always taking all the precautionary measures that are necessary to ensure that our personnel and equipment are safe.
A small group of concerned South African citizens have embarked on a march to the Gauteng legislature in Johannesburg to protest over the high number of illegal foreign nationals in South Africa. The organization leading the protests, March in March, says the demonstration is aimed at highlighting the high rate of illegal immigration into the country. They are calling on the government to tighten security at the borders as well as to ensure that law enforcement officials conduct intensified operations to deport foreign nationals who are in the country illegally. The convener of March in March, Nozibusiso Kambule, explains.
We are reaching out to the government of South Africa to tell them that we are tired of illegal immigration, as well as the crime that is committed by immigrants in South Africa, because we feel like we are not prioritized by our government and our safety is not taken care of, as well as the well-being, the social well-being of a South African is compromised because the government prefers the foreign nationals more than the South Africans.
The co-organizer of the march, Jacinda Ngobese in Durban in the KwaZulu-Natal province, says they want to return the country to its former glory as it is destroyed by foreign nationals. She says drugs are prolific and there are many human trafficking cases due to especially undocumented foreign nationals.
We heard a report from the Hawks that was actually saying organized crime, 60% of it is committed by people who are illegal immigrants, foreign nationals who come into the country. We've seen how people disregard our police and they'll tell you good to know, they'll just take cool drink money. I mean, that's a very bad culture, you know that they'll talk about the borders and they'll tell you good to know the borders are easy to come in because they know how to pay. They'll tell you about Home Affairs, I'll easily get my documents because I'm at Home Affairs. We've seen people who can't even get education certificates, matric certificates, because at Home Affairs someone else is using their identity.
Lastly, the Red Cross says humanitarian work in Gaza is on the verge of total collapse. This is 2 months after Israel imposed a blockade on aid supplies entering the territory. It says this was compounded by repeated attacks on hospitals and healthcare workers, and it called for the immediate resumption of aid deliveries. Earlier, humanitarian agencies warned that the last few dozen food kitchens still operating in the Gaza Strip are set to close within days. The BBC's Yolanda Nell.
There have been some powerful statements from top UN officials 2 months on from the blockade being imposed. We had the emergency director of the World Health Organization saying that what was unfolding was an abomination. And he said if we don't do something about it, we're complicit in what's happening. You then had the UN's humanitarian chief saying that this was a cruel collective punishment of Palestinians. And he said simply, blocking aid kills. Now, Israel has previously denied that there is a hunger crisis in Gaza, and it's just not clear at the moment when aid will be allowed back in.
Now, for any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I am Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
It is 7 minutes after 1 Central African time. Hello, and a very warm welcome to the Friday edition of The Upside. My name is Nompumelelo Ngubeni. Unfortunately, no Tebohole Kuleni today. I am flying solo. He's jetted off to a bit of a getaway this weekend, continuing his birthday, celebrating in the bush somewhere. So we'll hear from him as to how that is going when he comes back on Monday. But it is a Friday, and an exciting one at that. I don't think we've had an all-music Friday quite in the way that we're going to be doing it today. We're going to be speaking to Mandisa Jagavula, popularly known as Man's Not Hot. She's an influencer from out in Pretoria, where I'm from, but she's from Soshanguve, and we're going to be speaking to her about her journey really into the digital space and how documenting her life. You know, she started off quite simply doing vlogs, what are known as vlogs, and this is documenting your day to day, and it took off because so many people resonated with the simplicity of her life, but increasingly she grew. But that also means that you leave quite a substantial number of your initial followers behind, right? Because they no longer necessarily resonate with this new elevated you, who's now got brands just falling over themselves to work with you. But we're going to be speaking to Mandisa, Man's Not Hot, and founder of Hello IMNT. We're going to be finding out what that is all about. And we're obviously also going to be speaking to her about just the conduct of influencers and how they are managed, because there seems not to be an authority that governs what it is that influencers put out there. And we are then going to be speaking to Mngomezulu, rather. He is a DJ and producer, and our mix for this afternoon is by Mngomezulu. Finally, we speak to K-Mat, producer and DJ as well, and of course Gemma Fassi, whom we're all asking, is she related at all to the prolific Brenda Fassi? She's got a new single out, all that coming up and more, and of course what caught my eye. Lots of music. Do get in touch with me throughout the show. It is at Channel Africa 1 on all social media platforms, so that is including X, TikTok, Instagram. Facebook is at Channel Africa without the 1. But call us as well, +27 63 406 9126. It is 10 minutes after 1 Central African time.
Mix Vibration sur Channel Africa.
Nous allons accueillir sur ces plateaux de Mix Vibration un artiste pas comme les autres. Il est exceptionnel. Il se classe résolument dans la trajectoire des artistes qui défendent le patrimoine du folklore africain, mais aussi de la rumba. Ici, Jérémy Tchani.
En tout cas, je vous dis merci à la Channel Africa, à tout le monde qui nous suit. Dans la vie, si tu veux aller loin, il faut comprendre les temps. Il y a ceux-là qui étaient dans leur temps, mais à cause d'une mauvaise conduite, à cause des gens qui l'accompagnaient, à cause de sa famille, à cause beaucoup de choses, son temps passé.
Voilà, donc il faut toujours gérer le temps. Chaque chose a son temps, dit-on, et la couronne ne dure pas éternellement, dit-on. Donc il faut toujours gérer le temps que Dieu vous a donné sur la terre. C'est le message que Jérémy Tchani nous amène aujourd'hui sur Mix Vibration à Channel Africa.
Mix Vibration, tous les dimanches de 18h à 19h, temps universel.
Este é o Caleidoscópio de Canal África, com Remo Samo e João Yabalá.
O surto da cólera em Angola tem causado grande preocupação, afetando já mais de metade das províncias do país. Simultaneamente, a Agência dos Estados Unidos para o Desenvolvimento Internacional, USAID, um dos maiores doadores mundiais de assistência humanitária, decidiu não priorizar os países com maior incidência de malária. Para discutirmos as causas do alastramento da cólera em Angola e os impactos dessa decisão da USAID, convidamos o Dr. Jeremias Agostinho, médico e mestre em saúde pública, para partilhar a sua visão sobre o tema.
A doença, nesse momento, representa o maior risco de saúde pública que nós temos. Nos últimos anos, a nossa preocupação esteve sempre centrado com os casos de malária, os casos de tuberculose e também de infecção por VIH-Sida. A forma como, em pouco menos de 2 meses, os casos de cólera vêm aumentando, acaba por representar, nessa altura, um dos maiores desafios que o país tem. É expectável que, nesta fase, o número de casos venha a aumentar.
De segunda a sexta-feira, das 20 às 21 horas locais, este é o Caleidoscópio de Canal África.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802. and Portuguese, the languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster,